The following video contains spoilers for a silent voice. Also, my content is not for children. You know who one of my favorite characters is in a silent voice? Naoka Ueno.
She's terrible.
She pulled them out?
Push her off the bike.
Worst!
Oh my god, knock this girl out.
We found
Oh, I hate this girl so much.
the biggest trash person in this show so far.
Okay, I give permission for this man to put his hands on this woman to get her hearing aid back.
Okay, yeah, let me explain. Ueno is probably one of the most universally hated characters in anime, just hands down. Put her up there with mine and Show Tucker. And I'm not gonna sit here and say she's a good person. To do so would involve defending some things I really don't want to. Yeah, she does some bad things. That said, even if she's not a good person, she's an amazing character. From a writing perspective. And I just love her. She is, short of Shoya, the most dynamic character in the movie. And that includes Shoko. After Shoya, she's the character that changes the most, that thinks the most, that feels the most, and that we see struggle the most with their own actions and identity. And yes, Shoko does suffer more than she does in general, but mostly from bullies as a kid, or from internalized self-hatred as a teenager, or from Ueno. But I want to explain, really, why I feel that Ueno and not Shoko is the more developed character of the two, and why I like her so much. And to that end, let's begin with the fact that Ueno did not start out as the bully. The real bully, as is almost always the case, is the public education system. Honestly, I've been suggesting for 2 years that teachers watch this movie for the beginning bit alone, because most of the problems could have been avoided if the teacher had some sort of 504 plan. Like, he's making her read aloud. What is wrong with you? He has no pre-written notes for her, no one-on-one assistant, the notes aren't on the board for her to copy and he's just saying them and she's supposed to listen? And this is before she has hearing aids, by the way. Like, they put this girl in the chorus class? What is wrong with these people? Where are the accommodations? A proper plan would have stopped most of what's about to happen to her. But I digress. With a lack of support, it falls to the kids to take the initiative and support each other. And who is the first one to do so if not for our girl Ueno? That's right, Ueno agrees to take notes for her. So she's writing 2 pairs of notes, which is a lot of extra work, but she volunteers to do this. Meaning she starts as a helpful entity and someone willing to lend a helping hand to the new kid. The animosity then grows not because of Shoko herself, but because of the school system and their lack of foresight. First, the strain of writing 2 pairs of notes starts to wear on Ueno. Then she laments that they won't win the singing competition since Shoko was put in the class without any assistance. And finally, hammering that last nail into the coffin was Ueno getting publicly shamed for her reading while Shoko, who couldn't read as well for obvious reasons, got a pass. Her frustration is obviously at the teacher, but since all of it is centered around Shoko and since Ueno is a little kid, yeah, it makes sense that the hostility gets tangled. And remember that she didn't jump to bullying at that point. Shoya did, because he noticed the hostility that Ueno was feeling and he, being a dumb kid, decided to take action instead of read the room. Ueno was trying to distance herself and hoped that Shoko would take the message. Shoya decided to push Shoko away directly, and since these actions aligned with what she wanted, Ueno wasn't about to stop him. Later, she even starts bullying those who take on the role she used to serve, which makes sense in 2 ways. Kids are petty, and she's already hostile. She used to be the helper. She already went out of her way to help Shoko, and that was bad. Who does this kid think she is? So at this point, with the movie just started, we've seen 2 characters make dynamic changes. Shoya goes from a bystander to an active bully because his friend has been inconvenienced and he thinks he can fix this through harassment. And Ueno has gone from an ally to a hostile bystander and later an accomplice and fellow bully due to the actions of others and how they've impacted her. Meanwhile, Shimada, Kawai, and Hirose are just as guilty of the whole hostile bystander thing, but without the reasons Ueno has or the dynamic change in the character. And Shoko's personality stays at kick puppy level pretty much until she starts fighting back, and even then she's biting. Now, before I move on to the time skip, I do want to address the part where everyone turns on Shoya, because I think it's a very interesting scene in how it's done. Shoya gets called out, right? Everyone knows it's him that bullied Shoko and stole her hearing aids. Dude isn't exactly subtle. So anyway, Master Detective Teacher, whose job it was to stop this from happening in the first place, asked Ueno if she saw anything, and she says he teased her a little. Everyone always acts like she threw him under the bus here.
And you?
You dined me out.
But here's the thing. Dude was already caught and already confessed. She said tease her a little. She was still trying to protect him. Contrast that with what Shimada said.
I kept telling him to knock it off, but Shoya won't listen to anyone.
Now that's throwing under the bus. And then when Shoya in turn starts accusing them back for being accomplices, which, like, fair, Kawaii does the thing I hate most in the world.
How could you? How could you say something like that?
Right. Why would he, Kawaii? Why would he? Anyway. After this, Shoya gets his comeuppance, but this video isn't about him, and we don't see Ueno for a while, so let's go ahead and skip forward to the next time we do see her, when they're in high school. So as part of Shoya trying to make amends for everything, he takes Shoko to find that girl who dropped out of school when they were kids. Oh look, there she is! And while they're talking, the dude gets uncomfortable and goes for a walk, running into Ueno for the first time in years. Using the flyer she handed him, Shoya tracks down her workplace and pays a visit, and this is her reaction. This is interesting to me because why would she be nervous? Well, we sort of knew she liked them when they were kids, so maybe she still does. Or maybe she feels really bad about what happened and she feels embarrassed about having to confront her past. We've certainly seen some of that. We'll find out later it's both. So then a few days later, they run into each other again and she sits on his bike. She's all confident and playful, but the thing is, we were shown something else. We were shown how she really feels. Normally, movies tend to focus mostly on the perspectives of the protagonists. They don't always, obviously. We do have villains talking to each other and the like, but small humanizing things like a girl hiding behind a counter, the writers wanted us to know she's on shaky ground here. Then she sees Shoko and... yeah, it doesn't go well. Ueno defaults to her behaviors from when they last met, and Shoya tells her to get lost. Rightly so. She is very immature and awful in this scene. As a person. That said, I do want to point out some stuff that I do like about her as a character. Because I want to point out what she does. Reverting to the established default when stressed is literally what every single one of these idiots does. Sahara runs away again later and calls herself out on it. Kawaii plays the victim and escalates everything with her crying and drama, and no one ever calls her out on it in universe. Very few reactors even do. This is literally a point the movie is trying to make, that change is hard and you need a reason and to actively work at it. That's why Shoya and Shoko struggle so much, because neither of them actively work to resolve their problems. They just feel bad and make superficial changes, and it's only when they begin doing the hard work that things begin to change. Again, that's the movie. But everyone else? Kawaii, Sakura, Ueno? They didn't have a reason to change, so yeah. Why shouldn't she take the hearing aids and try to throw them to Shoya? That's what they do, right? Again, not a good thing to do, but well written. And the second thing, the bit where she calls out his attempts at making friends. So many people get angry at her for being bitter or jealous or needing to grow up, but like, she's right. Shoya himself later says he began trying to be friends with her as a way to make up for things as part of his whole unaliving bucket list. And Ueno is not the only one that calls him out for this. Yuzuru does too, and no one ever gets on her case over it. Ueno, for all her flaws, might be the most emotionally competent in the group, and wow, that is sad. Like, really sad. But yeah, no, I stand by that. I'll get into her blind spots in a bit, but she's very self-aware and able to read others, if bluntly. She's definitely on the money in that he's still trying to assuage his guilt and that it's not a real friendship yet. Anyway, the Yuzuru. Yuzuru is the most emotionally competent. Anyway, the next time we see Ueno after that is at the theme park, and there are a couple of interesting things here. One, Shoya starts to see her as a friend again, despite their last meeting. Two, she seems to actually be trying. Ueno is a lot of things, and I do mean a lot of things, but she's not fake. She straight up hates faking and pretending, and yet here, the most opinionated and outspoken character is trying her best to be friendly with someone she has been openly hostile with. I think most people skip this, or just see it as her just pretending because, but I think it's important to study it because of what happens next, which is her attempt to reunite Shoya with Shimada. It doesn't go well. As I said, Ueno is second best in the group at the whole reading people and situations thing, and she noticed how Shoya was apparently able to just jam everyone from his past together and form a semi-functioning friend group. So she tried it. She was there, she was nice, and she also tried to jam two people she cared about from her past together. Except that now there's distance again, and she feels it. This speaks to a vulnerability in her. Yuna tried things her way last time and it didn't work, and now she's tried it Shoujo's way and that didn't work either. But she is trying. She is re-examining how she does things, probably for the first time since childhood. I said earlier that she hadn't had a reason before, but she does now. She got one when she got brushed off at the last meeting, which makes me really interested as to how her day was like after that, but I digress. Ueno is struggling and changing and stumbling in that change, which leads me to the infamous Ferris wheel scene. Through secret footage, we can hear the conversation that Ueno and Shoko had, and it's very revealing. Now, most people immediately jump into how much of a bitch Ueno is, but let's slow down for a second. Yes, she's in the wrong here. I am not excusing her at all. But I do want to understand her, because based on what we know about her and what she says, we actually can. I mentioned the blind spot earlier, and that is that Ueno does not understand mental health. At all. She doesn't understand self-hatred. This conversation basically starts with Ueno saying, "Hey, I hate you, and I know you hate me, and I hate pretending otherwise, but we also have shared friends. Can we just be cool without having to pretend to be nice to each other?" Like, if you read her words, that's basically the message. Ueno hates being fake, but is trying to stop there being any further hostilities. This is as close to a peace offering as she can give because, in her mind, the feelings are mutual and this will be what's best for everybody. She probably expected Shoko to say yes, and then they would have been able to hang out as a group and just not talk to each other. Like, maybe this way they could have avoided direct contact or something. But that's not what happened, because Shoko, the kicked puppy that she is, doesn't hate anyone but herself, and Ueno does not understand that. Not that she doesn't believe it, she can't believe it. Not yet, anyway. Maybe she thinks Shoko is putting up an act of being pitiable. Maybe she thinks she's just being lied to. Maybe Ueno is just confused by the concept of self-hatred. In any case, she lashes out and gives Shoko a reason to hate her. She even says so.
What are you gonna do? You gonna say sorry again?
The whole bit was a show to get Shoko on the same emotional wavelength of understanding. This wasn't bullying, it was goading. She wanted a response. And I do want to make it clear again that I'm not justifying these actions. She's not a good person, especially here, but like, I understand what she's doing and why, and she's far more interesting and dynamic than, like, Kawaii. And this doesn't make me nearly as angry as what Kawaii pulls leading towards the bridge.
This is the bridge, Paul.
So Shoujo gets stopped by Mashibasa and gets asked about some asshole that Kawaii was talking about who used to bully Shoko for being deaf. I know, right? Who would ever? Shoya asks Kawhi to maybe cool it with the gossip because he's trying really hard to move past it and this could maybe kickstart the rumors all over again. And Kawhi responds in the way that anyone that knows her would expect.
Remember when I told you Shoko was bullied? Well, it was Shoya. He was the one who used to bully her.
So yeah, like I said, none of them have changed at all. Eventually, the entire group meets up on the bridge, gathered by Kawhi so that Shoya can publicly apologize. Shoya probably would have done it too, except my girl Ueno steps in and says, hey, we can't just put that on him. Which, like, yeah, Ueno would be the one to do 1. Defend Shoya, 2. Call everyone else out, and 3. Be self-aware enough to realize that, like, yeah, they all played a part. Kawhi responds how you'd expect. This exchange reveals a couple of things though. Ueno takes ownership of her wrongdoings. She knows she treated Shoko badly, and she also knows that bystanders have an impact, which is so far beyond Kawhi's understanding of things. Then, when Shoya starts lashing out and he says that everything is his fault and starts being all self-deprecating and self-hating, she mentions that she hates that kind of thinking. This lines up with the exchange in the Ferris wheel. She doesn't see it as genuine, she sees it as an opinion, as something put upon. Lastly though, despite everything, she takes ownership. I shouldn't have come. And like, yeah, why did she come? What was her goal? Usually when she says this, reactors are like, yeah, she shouldn't have come. But like, the entire time she kept people in check, admitting to her own wrongdoings and keeping others from putting everything on Shoya. Kawhi is the one who brought her, but she was her biggest antagonist in this conversation. I find that really interesting, especially because the one that she used to actively bully was Sahara, who she is friends with now, and whom she asked questions of to show Kawhi that her being a bystander had consequences. There's a story here. Ueno is the second most emotionally competent one in the group. Kawhi invited her to the bridge to force Shoya to apologize. Kawhi, whom Ueno knows, stood by while she bullied Sahara, her friend who would also be in attendance. Ueno, who hates fakes and false pretenses. Based on this setup, everything that happens makes sense, and just highlights the growth that Ueno has had. More than I can say for just about every other character. And then Shoya gets hospitalized. Okay, so things happen and Shoya's trying way too hard to be friendly with Shoko, and Shoko tries to unalive herself and Shoya takes the fall instead. He lives but is in a coma in the hospital. Shoko is there too, alive but with some damage to her arm. Oh, and Ueno is there too.
Don't you dare try to play the victim!
Visiting.
Say something! What? You finally felt bad for all the problems you created for everyone, so you decided to kill yourself?
So yeah, by all accounts this is bad. Ueno assaulting the recently off the ledge puppy is bad. I don't have to tell you that. Plenty of other people can tell you that.
Oh my gosh.
Dude! She's being beat down because of this?
Somebody please just... Oh! Oh! Woohoo!
Yes. Who did it? Who did it? Yes!
Ozan. The justice!
Yo, Rengoku versus Akaza? Boring. Saitama versus Boros? Lame. This right here is the anime fight of the decade.
What a terrible person!
Right? Imagine going so hard on somebody and just...
I can't stand this. I would be fine if they killed her off.
What? What's wrong with her? Fuck!
Mom's doing God's work.
Thanks, Mom. Like, slap her more. Oh my god.
Okay, not to pull the upper middle class soccer mom with a violent kid impression, but let me at least explain Ueno's behavior in this scene though. We know she doesn't get mental health. We know she doesn't understand depression. She thinks all of this is self-pity and woe is me and look at me and feel bad for me bullshit. She even says Shoko is trying to make herself out to be some tragic heroine, and as far as she's concerned, she left a really close friend, someone she really cares for, in her care, and he almost died. She's not running on rational thoughts here, and this ticked all of her triggers. Again though, not justifying it, but so many people want this girl beat and celebrate when the mom steps in and starts fighting the teenager. I just think this is tragic all around, because from her perspective, Shoko is being selfish and no one is willing to admit it, just like Kawaii was unwilling to admit her fault either. She really does care, she's just wrong, and people can be wrong without being irredeemable. Anyway, after that, she decides that she's going to take a more personal approach and be there to make sure Shoya is okay from now on. People complain about this too, but if anything, we know how much she does actually care about Shoya, and we later learn that she was there the entire time he was in a coma, every single day. It's also safe to assume she doesn't assault Shoko again, but that she doesn't trust her near Shoya, which not her call. That one could have been resolved by going to an adult, but again, I digress. Shoko decides to reform the broken friend group so they are all together when Shoya awakens, and that means befriending Ueno, which she attempts by being consistent and with a show of kindness. When I first saw this, it tripped me up because so many people do nice things for Shoko. So many people do mean things to her too, but so many people do nice things for her, and aside from when she was cleaning the desk for Shoya and later when she bought him a gift, I don't remember her doing nice things for other people. And the reason this tripped me up for the most part is that the first person to do a nice thing for her was Ueno.
She can't hear. Oh, that's nice.
Aww. Yeah, people must have to communicate with her through her notebooks so much.
Look, these kids are raised right. They're so helpful.
So now the movie comes to the end, Shoya is back, and we have 2 more scenes to go through. The first is when he talks to her after he gets home. He finds out she was the one that looked after him, and she apologizes for being a bad person and not being able to like Shoko in the end, despite trying. And what this tells us is that she's been trying, presumably since their fight, probably since the umbrella incident. She also mentions that Shimada helped save his life and did not want this known. Ueno didn't have to admit to this, but she does it because she hates lies and being fake. The axe falls because Shoya realizes that, despite everything, Ueno really is a friend. And then the last scene with her is when the friends are all together again, and Shoko starts getting nervous about some playful arguing that's happening. Ueno steps in and tells her not to worry, that arguing like that is normal, and calls her a moron. In sign language. She learned sign language. She's trying to learn sign language. She's making an effort. And let's look at the picture all together. Ueno is this girl who was super nice and helpful to the new deaf girl she met at school one day. However, due to the school's circumstances and the resentment for her teacher that were tied to having to help the new deaf girl, she began to resent the deaf girl as well. Her crush began to bully the deaf girl, and she became a bystander and occasional bully until the whole thing collapsed and the friend group dissolved for years. When they met up again, she defaults to the old dynamics and finds it doesn't work, so she lashes out. However, she's left re-examining how she handles things. They meet up again at a theme park, and she makes an effort to mend these friendships, even going so far as to try to mend other friendships from their past. But this backfires, and she finds herself even further back than when she first started. Hurt and disillusioned, she has a conversation with the deaf girl and tries to agree to a cease and desist, where they agree to just not talk to each other and coexist in mutual hatred. However, the deaf girl does not agree and instead says she hates herself. Confused and thinking she's being lied to, Ueno lashes out, trying to provoke a response. Failing to get one, she leaves. Ueno is left to her own devices until she is summoned by an old accomplice who wants her help. Her old crush needs to be made to apologize for his past actions. Ueno agrees to come but realizes there's something wrong with the picture. She's just as guilty of those past actions against the deaf girl and the other friend present, and so is the girl who summoned her. She takes a stand and refuses to let things go unanswered. Her old crush, however, lashes out against everyone, and Ueno leaves, once again feeling like she's done more harm than good. She resolves to leave everyone alone for good this time. That is, until she hears about the accident. Her old crush is in the hospital in a coma, having saved the deaf girl who tried to jump off a balcony. This girl that her crush has done everything for, sacrificed and suffered and repented so much for. She was going to make it all meaningless, and he had almost died for it. Ueno lashes out until her crush's mom puts a stop to it. She vows to stay by his side until he wakes up, coming by every day to take care of him. Leaving was a mistake. She knows that now. It seems she can't stop making them recently. Still, she goes to work and life moves on. After work, she sees the deaf girl. She ignores her at first, but one rainy night, she offers her an umbrella. A kindness. Is this another mistake? What will her crush think? Wasn't this important? She vows to try again to make things work. And try she does. She even learns some sign language. And even though she never gets to the point where she and the deaf girl can be considered close friends, her crush wakes up and they can all be together as a group again without a fight breaking out. And maybe that's good enough for now. Ueno fascinates me because of how much she changes in this story and how much of that change is her actively trying to change. Which again is kind of the point of the story. Shoya tries to change at various points of the story and sometimes it backfires and he has to start again, which makes him the most dynamic character in the story. He's the protagonist, that makes sense. However, the other character in the poster is Shoko and she doesn't actually change that much. Really, her main turning point would come after this movie once she's decided to live and what that would mean to her. I already mentioned my thoughts on Kawaii's growth. Sahara said she's gonna try, and Nagatsuka's perfect. He doesn't need to change. So really, that makes Ueno the second most dynamic character in this movie. And I love her for it. She is not a good person, but she's trying to be. She makes a lot of bad decisions, and her actions are just straight up reprehensible at times. But they're all consistent with her character, and they all make sense, and I understand her even if I don't support her. I really don't like the hate she gets because she's one of the best characters in this movie. And why are you going to hate on her when Kawai is literally right there?